Some ugly scenarios have happened in some places where there were some heated arguments between priests and catechists on the one hand, and then parents on the other hand, who brought their children for baptism concerning the acceptability of some names the parents wanted to use for baptism of their children. It is on this background that I want to discuss an important topical issue on what names should be used for Catholic baptism. A significant element in one's existence is the name that one bears or that one is given. It can say much about one's personality, nationality, lineage, language, and so on. In fact, it is fundamental in any form of dealing, say bank transactions, certificates, marriage, authorship, and so on and so forth. A name is so paramount that one cannot exist without a name. To exist without a name means that one is not existing in the world. This explains its import in baptism. Baptism, as we know, is the substructure upon which other aspects of Christian life are built. In fact, baptism is the gateway to the life in the Spirit, without which one is not a Christian. We can confer the Catechism of the Catholic Church, number 1213. If it is impossible to think of the existence of a nameless human being, similarly, it is also impossible to think of the existence of a nameless baptized person. Thus, if baptismal name is a possession of every baptized person, the question to come into mind is, what names should be used for Catholic baptism? And this is the bone of the contention here. But before going further, we have to know, what is a baptismal name? A baptismal name is a name that is given when one is baptized or christened. It can also be called a Christian name. And we have to know that in Catholic baptism, a child is baptized in the presence of God, so that the person's name is linked to that of God, because God knows each person and calls each person by name. We can confer Isaiah chapter 43 verse 1. And we have to know that a baptismal name accompanies a person throughout his or her whole life. For instance, when a woman gets married, her surname or last name changes, but her baptismal name remains forever. This shows a beautiful symbol of the sacrament's lasting mark on her soul. Having said this, going through the annals of the scriptures, we shall discover that God takes the selection of names very seriously. For instance, God changed the names Abram to Abraham in Genesis chapter 17 verse 5, Sarai to Sarah in Genesis chapter 17 verse 15, Jacob to Israel in Genesis chapter 32 verse 29, Simon to Peter in John chapter 1 verse 42. Even God instructed Angel Gabriel to tell Zachariah to name his son John in Luke chapter 1 verse 13. Equally commanded Joseph to name the Mary's son Jesus in Luke chapter 1 verse 31. Having said this, we have to enter proper. What names should be used for Christian baptism? As we have noted before, that the name one bears is the most treasured and the first possession that one acquires in life. This is why choosing a good baptismal name is very necessary. But in recent times, it does appear that there are some misconceptions concerning which names should be used for Catholic baptism and the ones that should not be used. For instance, Canon 761 of the Old Code, that is 1917 Code of the Canon Law, says that pastors should take care that Christian names are used for baptism when they are baptizing, if they are not able to bring this about, they should add to the name that is given by parents the name of some saints and record both names in the book of baptism. And then by Christian name, it means names like Christian, Charity, Hope, and so on, or names taken from the Bible. From this scenario now, some persons insist that baptismal names are only Christian names, saintly names, or names that are taken from the Bible. However, with the implementation of the reforms of Vatican II Council, this is no longer a compulsory rule. Thus, in the current code of the canon law, that is 1983 code, it simply says that parents, sponsors, and the parish priest should take care that a name is not given which is foreign to Christian sentiment. We can confer code 855, that is canon 855. As can be deduced, the statement is expressed negatively, meaning that instead of telling parents, sponsors, or parish priests what they must do, a few names are considered outlandish, while the rest are left to the prayerful reflection of the parents, the sponsors, and the parish priests. For example, it would be very strange to Catholic understanding if a parent should give to his or her child at baptism or a newly converted Catholic names like Ogugu, Alosi, Ikenga, Aboki at his or her baptism. In such scenario, the intention of that parent or the sponsor or parish priest should be questioned. Moreover, it is an age-long tradition that children are given the names of saints at their baptism, whom they will later come to know, come to love, and come to venerate. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church encourages this. We can confer Catechism CCC number 2156. By a saint, we mean a faithful disciple who has led a life of exemplary fidelity to the Lord, and we are assured of his or her intercession. It is very, very important to underscore that when a person, a child, or a newly converted Catholic is named after a saint, it is a genuine reminder to the child and everyone else that God is calling the child, like his or her Christian namesake, to life of holiness and the heaven. And very importantly, the saint will provide a kind of model to the child and then intercedes for the child, even helping the person to be faithful to his or her baptismal promises. And a very important aspect is also in the transmission of the deposit of faith. This is done through naming a child after a known saint. Again, special interactions are built between the saints and those who are named after them, that the saints can support and also provide help to the person as the person grows in life. Going further, the Catechism of the Catholic Church notes that a Christian name can also express, that is, a baptismal name can also express a Christian mystery or a Christian virtue. When we say mystery, we mean the idea of something that is hidden but now has been revealed, something that is unapproachable but gives entry, something that is unknowable but gives true meaning. Names that can express Christian mystery are names like Emmanuel or Emanuela, Pascal or Pascaline, Anastasius or Anastasia, while the names that can explain Christian virtues are names like Irene, Modestus, Joy, Hope, and so on and so forth. Going further, it is worthy to underscore that saintly names must not be Western or English. We know that saints come from different countries and cultural backgrounds, as the etymology of some of their names can express. For example, somebody can be named Iwene after Blessed Iwenetans. We know that Pio is an Italian equivalent of Pius. Ivan is a Croatian equivalent of what? John. What is important is that when a culture is Christianized, that culture can also help people to encounter God. Citizens of that culture can become saints, and then faithful from that culture can start using their names for their baptism. Having said this now, we have to answer the question, can Igbo names be used for baptism? Before going to answer this question, it is important to understand what significance a name holds among Ndi Igbo. Ndi Igbo is a people with unique cultural heritage, and one of the elements that depicts the peculiarity of Igbo people is in the name parents give to their children. Names are not given at random. There are some circumstances surrounding the names that are given. For example, Ihanacho means we have found what you have been looking for. In the same way, Chukwuemeka means God has done so much for us. Having said this now, and we have to know that among Ndi Igbo, a name conveys something more that mere words can express. And among Ndi Igbo also, for somebody to exist without a name means that somebody is faceless. The person is socially inconsequential. In fact, the person has no social status. Having said this now, coming to the question, can Igbo names be used for baptism? The answer is yes. The indispensable role of baptism as the gateway to the reception of other sacraments in the church, when we confer the Catechism of the Catholic Church, number 1213, shows that baptism is not a personal property or monopoly of any particular culture. In fact, the Gospel pericope of Matthew chapter 28 verse 19 has already shed light on this when it says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit." This means that there is a clarion call for everybody, for every culture, including Igbo culture, to hear the good news. Moreover, the church can enter into communion with all forms of culture, thereby enriching itself and also those cultures. We can confer the conciliar documents, the pastoral constitution of the church in the modern time, Gaudium et Spes number 58. The bottom line of all this is that culture can be Christianized. And when this happens, that culture can become an instrument of salvation. Thus, there is nothing wrong in using indigenous names for baptism once these names are not alien to Christian understanding. For examples, the names Ifunanya, meaning charity, Anwule, joy, Chekubenachuku, hope, and so on and so forth. They are Christian virtues and can be used for baptism. Similarly, names like Chikaima, Chisende, Ulukanachukwu, Onyekachukwu, Kansiyochukwu, and so on and so forth are not alien to Catholic understanding. They are God-bearing names and can be used for baptism. Again, a saintly, a biblical name can be translated into various dialects and that can be used for baptism. For example, Michael it comes from the Hebrew word Mikael, meaning who is like God. And this is equivalent to Onyedikachukwu in Igbo culture. In the same way, Benedict, or the female form Benedicta, is from the Latin word benedictus, meaning blessed, and its noun form is blessing. This can stand for Ngozi Chukwu or Onyinye Chukwu. John means that God has fulfilled his promise, and this is in tandem with our own Chukwu Emezugo or Chi Emezugo. In the same way, Kansi Yochukwu can stand for Samuel, which means I asked God for him. Compare 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 20. Moreover, those who are using saintly names in their dialects will also be celebrating their feast days on those days where these saints are being celebrated in the church. For example, somebody that is using Onyedikachukwu as his or her baptismal name will be celebrating his feast day on September 29, when St. Michael the Archangel is celebrated in the church. Equally, somebody that uses Ngozi Chukwu or Onyinye Chukwu as his or her baptismal name will be celebrating his or her feast day on July 11 when the Holy Man St. Benedict of Nursia is commemorated in the Western Church. Moreover, some persons may ask, why did the Christ, apostles and early Christians not use saintly names for baptism? We have to know that during their own time, the church was not structured and standardized as we have it now. It was when the church became structured and standardized that people started using these apostles, John the Baptist and the early Christians, as witnesses whom they can emulate. Conclusively, we have to know that to exist without a name means that one is not existing in the world. In the same way, baptismal name is important. And the church advocates strongly that people can use saintly names or biblical names or Christian names for baptism, because these saints will be models that can be emulated, and they will also be interceding for those who are named after them. Inculturation also allows that people can use indigenous names at baptism once these names are not alien to Christian understanding. I thank everybody for the audience. I am Reverend Father Cosmas Emengini, a priest of the Cali Diocese of Awka.